Hey everyone, hi, welcome to this new lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss about subledger. So in our last lecture, we discussed about general ledger, right, or GL, or in most of the discussions, we will use the term ledger, right? So we have discussed about what is general ledger, what are the nature of transactions what are the nature of data recorded in general ledger in our last lecture. So you can go through that lecture and understand about GL, right? Now, in the last lecture, for a quick synopsis, general ledger is a repository of all the accounting data, right? In comparison to general ledger, subledger is the source of all accounting data, right? Plus it stores various non-accounting data also, right? So subledger is where all the business functions or most of the business functions do their daily work, right? Do their daily activities. Daily activities happen at the subledger level. Now these activities in some stage can generate accounting data, right? Or no account, or can generate no accounting data. Like for example, if in a subledger I'm just running some report, that is not generating any accounting data. But say if I'm recording any transactions, that may generate accounting data. So all the business functions in all the business functions use different subledgers that are useful to them and record transactions. So the primary purpose of subledger is to perform. So the primary function or the primary understanding of subledger is to perform the business function, right? That the subledger is supposed to do, and generate accounting data for GL. Okay. So that's that is what we record in subledger. Again, as I discussed in the general ledger lecture, the function of subledger is not very different from the traditional understanding of subledger. Like for example, in our accounting classes or in our bookkeeping classes in our school or colleges, we have heard things like a purchase day book, right, or a sales day book, right? So these kind of although these are very rudimentary or very dated accounting practices, but still from a basic understanding point of view, these are very critical. So a purchase day book is usually records, for example, a purchase day book, right? A purchase day book records various details related to any kind of purchase that a business is doing. Similarly, sales day book record various kind of sales that a business is doing, and the format of these books are different, right? They don't conform to the traditional journal format, right? So that is what is a critical difference between a subledger and GL, that it has accounting data plus it has various non-accounting data which is useful to generate various reports at the subledger level, right? At the subledger level. So as in one of my earlier discussions about ERP, one of the primary purpose of ERP is, apart from record, is also report, right? And for reporting you need data, right? And this data needs to be captured, right? Because if a system doesn't have data captured, it will not be, if you don't have data captured, you will not be able to report on that, right? So reporting is, so capturing is very important for reporting, and it is here at this function is where the subledger comes into the picture. Subledger lets a business capture various data points, right? And not all of them might directly be accounting or financial, right? So it can capture something, it can capture accounting, it can capture financial data, right? It can also capture non-financial data, right? And out of this financial data, some might generate accounting, some might not generate accounting, right? And non-financial data obviously doesn't generate accounting. Right? Now let's take example of a subledger and ledger combination, a subledger and GL combination, and a subledger or GL or subledger or a ledger combination, right? Just a quick synopsis. Subledgers, there are various subledgers in different ERP systems, and all of these subledgers post the data to GL. Okay, so you can have one GL, but you can have multiple subledgers, right? Like for example, let's say this is my AP subledger, this is my AR subledger, this is my FA subledger. I'm just taking the financial subledger example, but there could be anything, and this concept as a whole applies to any and all of those subledgers. So let's take example of AP. Now in AP, you are doing a invoicing. Okay, you invoicing you from supplier, right? Now this is a business, this is a very critical business function. A supplier sends you invoice, right? And that invoice is entered in the system, right? So this supplier invoice is first captured in AP, right? Now when you are capturing it in AP, right, you are capturing it in a format that is very unique to AP. And say for example, you are capturing data points, right? Like for example, you capture date, right? Like for example, you capture name of supplier, right? You capture item details, right? What you have bought, right? You might also capture accounting information, right? Accounting information, like your charge account or your liability account, right? I will do one more lecture on this accounting part, but this part is assuming that you are at least aware of what is the basic accounting structure. I'll do a crash course on the accounting section also, which is again would be ERP independent. Okay, so so for example, in AP you captured an invoice with these data points, right? I'm taking it very simple, right? Now out of this data points, maybe only this out of all the 4 data points here, maybe this is a accounting data, right? This would generate a accounting information. This would generate accounting information which will be interfaced, which will be sent to GL. This would be sent to GL, right? But when you're capturing it in AP, you are not capturing it in a debit credit form, right? Like for example, in GL, it will a typical invoice transaction would look like a charge account is debited and your vendor liability or your supplier liability is credited, right? So this is a typical structure in which we are used to seeing data in GL, right? But in subledger, the format and the number of data points are very much. For example, you have also entered amount, right? You have also entered currency and so forth. So there could be many data points here that could be captured. So even though the final accounting entry looks like this in GL, right? In subledger, the number of data points that you capture could be more beyond the typical data point, the typical points that you need for only accounting, right? And so for example, just looking at GL, you will not be able to tell what is my vendor. So for example, at GL, right, if you want a report saying, tell me how much I own to, say, for example, you are buying softwares from Microsoft, right? You are buying laptops from Dell for your business, right? Now, if you want to say how much is the balance of Microsoft or how much is the balance of Dell as a supplier in your books, you'll not be able to tell that using GL, right? So GL will not give you this information. You will get this information from your subledger, right? So each subledger, as this example shows, has a function to capture much more detail beyond the pure accounting detail needed for accounting and reporting, right? Like for example, using this information, you can run a trial balance or a profit and loss or a balance sheet, right? So you can say, when you look at for example, if you look at balance sheet, you can tell that what is your total vendor liability, right? Total vendor liability balance, right? But at the individual account level, so for example, at a individual vendor level, this information will be coming from your subledger. Okay, so that is the basic understanding of subledger, right? So subledger captures the various transaction or financial events that are happening in for a business function. It captures it in a particular or a given format, and then out of that information that is captured, the accounting information is sent to GL. So if you look into this figure here, if you see, like similar, like I just took an example of AP. Like similar to AP, there are AR, FA, there are hundreds of modules that send accounting data to GL, right? But what remains at the subledger level is also important, right? So in ERP, like reports can be generated out of GL or it can be generated out of subledger, right? Obviously, the content is different of each report, the format is different for each report, but still reports that are necessary to run the business or to run or to report on any aspect of your business can be obtained from subledger, right? Okay, so that is what I wanted to discuss in this lecture. Let me know if you want me to add more details or more color to this this particular lecture. I'll be happy to do that, but this I just wanted to have a discussion on the basic concept of subledger and how it is different from the general ledger concept that we discussed in the last lecture. So go to the last lecture for understanding the concept of general ledger, and then this lecture will let you know how that function is different from the subledger. So anytime you discuss ledger and subledger, you have to understand the difference, or you have to consider it parallelly so that you can note the differences and then appreciate the difference. Okay, so thank you for joining in this lecture, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.